Welcome, everyone. And I'm still John Dupuis, and Dr. Roger Walsh is still himself, thank God. And today we have with us an extraordinary guest. And I don't know how not to say something that doesn't sound like a cliche, but Shachar Erez. And he is a dear friend of mine. And he is in Israel. And he's an Israeli American. He has passports from both places, but he chose to raise his family in Israel. And we met when I was teaching at JFK University, and just one of those things, there was a glimmering, there was a something when I met this guy, and really, and we just stayed in touch. There was some kind of connection that was made. So Shachar is. He's intricately informed, for those of you who know what that means. He's very transpersonal. He is a therapist, a successful therapist in Israel, and his specialty is helping married couples fall back in love. And he has a very successful, vibrant practice. And you're probably going to get so many phone calls from this. I think this is just our contacts, because it's a noble, wonderful field, and I've never really heard anybody doing that before, Shachar. So sometime in more peaceful times, we'll have you back, Shachar, where you talk about that part of your life. I think it's absolutely fascinating and could help save the world in a big way. So yes, and when this thing happened, when the war began, and there was the slaughter of the innocents and civilians that were killed, I couldn't get a hold of Shachar for whatever reason. And I couldn't, my WhatsApp and my emails, and I was very, very concerned. So I would just, every couple of days, I would finally send a message out, and I would pray for him and his family. And he was okay. I mean, okay physically, but yeah. So we've been talking, and I just want to say I'm deeply, deeply affected by this whole thing. And I hope that what comes from me is helpful and wise, but I'm feeling very, very strongly about this, and praying my ass off to try to stay centered and stay in a good place. So, Shachar, is there anything that I left out that you'd like to add for people to know about you?
No, thank you. That was good. Excuse me. Just flooded here. No, that was good. I'm not, I'm just a guy here today, an Israeli guy, integrally informed, a couples therapist, but, I'm here just to be me. I'm not presenting anyone, really. Just myself.
And I'd like to just add to what you implied earlier, John, and you did too, Shachar, in that basically our aspirations for this, and my hope is that we can have a dialogue, use our dialogue to, in some small way, through our outreach, which is now fairly significant, in some way help and heal. We can hold all the suffering on all sides in our hearts, and not fall so easily into the partisanship, which is rancorous even here in many countries around the world. It's amazing how partisanship has become quite extreme in so much of the world around us. And the hope that we can hold a larger, more encompassing and compassionate perspective, and consider the bigger picture as much as we possibly can. And even to say that is deemed inappropriate in some circles these days, but that's my hope.
Yeah.
Thank you, Roger. That's beautiful. And I gotta say, I'm not sure I can hold all perspectives right now. I'm very flooded. I was today in a funeral of a 79-year-old that was murdered, the father of my friend, and his wife was kidnapped and their son is still missing.
God, I'm so sorry, brother.
And one-fourth of their community, 25%, every fourth person.
Well, Shachar, while you're feeling your feelings, let me tell folks a little bit about my history with all this. And when I was very young, we lived in the jungles of Mexico with my family, and it was my mom taught us, and I was the youngest. And so I'd finish my work and I'd sit in and listen to what my brothers were learning, like 4 and 7 years ahead of me. And they started talking about the Holocaust. And I must have been 5, 6 years old. And I was just, what? What? Human beings can do stuff like this? And that became one of the questions of my life. How can such things happen? And then when I was probably around 11 or 12, I read my first big, fat, juicy novel, and that was Exodus by Leon Uris. And he was talking about it's a novel, a historical novel about the Jews trying to get out of Europe after the Holocaust and getting to Israel and the foundation of the Israeli state. And I was like, I lived in an upper middle class family, and I had great parents, and I had every opportunity, but there was something in that book that had so much meaning to it. And I said, I want to have that kind of meaning. I want to care that much, and I just don't care enough. There's nothing here that really grabs me like that. So, and in the ensuing years, I've studied Jewish history and Jewish mysticism, and had many friends, and been deeply affected by Jewish thinkers and philosophers and scientists and Einsteins and all of this in a huge way. And so I'm a bit of a pro-Semite, and that really sounds really ridiculous, but Jewophile or something like that. I have a lot of respect for that team, and I know that makes me not balanced, and people are going to be pissed at me saying this right now, but I just feel that way. And I love Israel like I love America, with open heart and open eyes. Okay, I truly love my country, but I truly get we ain't perfect, and we made a lot of mistakes, and I try to acknowledge that. And as I do that, my love grows. And I feel the same way about Israel. I don't agree with everything. And poor Jews, oh my God, either you guys are Satan or you're the chosen people that are the solution to everything. So either they put you down, down in the depths of hell, or on this spiritual, mountain way. It's really hard to live up to. You can't be bad enough. You can't be good enough. It's a hard thing. And of course it's because you guys have been such a huge impact on Western history and through the West of the whole world. So it's and now I notice with this war going on, you're starting to see anti-Semitism come up, and people are, just it's right there. It's a part of our history. It's a part of our being. So if we can bring wisdom and compassion to this, and realize that there's a lot of killing and dying going on, and there are Palestinians who had nothing to do with the Hamas maniacs who are dying because of that. And I think Hamas wanted that to happen too. So how can we get through this? And maybe even more personally, Shachar, how does a man with your spiritual values and your ethical values, how do you get through a time like this? And what you just went through, a funeral for a 9-year-old who was murdered in the last few weeks. So let me just turn that over to you, Shachar.
Thank you, John. Well, the truth is I don't know yet. We're still in it.
Yeah, of course.
We're after the big horror, but there's still war with Gaza, with Hamas, and there might be war with Lebanon and Syria and Iran, and we're not safe yet. The end of trauma. When we treat trauma patients, we look for when they're safe. We're not there yet.
Mm-hmm.
We're still in the midst of this acute stress. I can tell you what's working for me now, and I can tell you where I feel I'm not done yet. And the first few days, the first week was just super scary. I've been to the military, I've been to scary events. This was beyond anything anyone ever experienced. So for a few days, we were really scared. My wife was shaking for a couple of days, shaking all the time. Slowly, we got out of that freeze state, and we feel a little bit safer, and we're more grim. I'm saying we, but it's actually me. People are having very different experiences, but I was very scared at the beginning. It was hard to function. The grief was overwhelming. It was. I was trying to do just small actions like doing the dishes or doing the laundry or taking care of the garden. This was functioning. This was, wow, alive. It got a little bit better in the last week or so. I'm functioning pretty well. I'm seeing clients, and that's very resourcing to me, actually, to be there for other people. I'm doing my practices. Working out is very helpful. After working out, I have a couple of hours that I can feel capable. I meditate, I think, twice than ever, which means like twice a day, sometimes 3 times a day. I can also feel this, I don't know how to call it, blessing, I guess, that I have this deep knowing that with all this horror, with all this, when everything seems so broken, I still have this knowing that everything is okay. It's not a belief, I can feel it. Thank God for that. And it's actually getting stronger, which is surprising to me. I can tell you part of my practice is to make part of my spiritual practice is to make others what I feel is other, to make it me, to find where I am like that. I'm struggling with that right now.
I bet. Brilliant.
It's not easy to find such a horrifying part in me. I can feel the impulse to for revenge and to kill and to get rid of that part, of Hamas and what it represents. That's still a challenge.
Yeah. And you also, when we talked the other day, you said that you were working with groups, I guess, other therapists that are trying to help people who are, like you said, we're right in the middle of it. It's not PTSD, it's the trauma of the moment. And maybe tell us a little bit how what you bring with your practice and your knowing, how does that work, and what can you possibly say or do for people who are going through this, are in it, I should say. Yeah.
I can say that the amount of trauma is just shocking and we can't really understand it. But what I'm seeing more than ever is resiliency. I was talking to people that were in that party, that they were hunted down. It was 6:30 a.m. The sun was rising, the peak of the festival. everybody is super happy, love is in the air, freedom, beautiful sky. And then missiles start dropping on them, and then people start shooting at them, and they're running away. And I don't know how many were killed, but many escaped. And I talked to a few that escaped. I think they will be okay. Actually, it's how do I explain that? They were resourceful enough in the moment. The moment was ours, yeah. They were resourceful enough for ours to be able to escape. I think they'll be okay. When I was talking to them, the practice was to remember what was happening. We were trying to prevent future PTSD symptoms. Okay, so they're super confused and numb and all sorts of symptoms that right now make sense. But we want them to go away within 4 to 6 weeks so they don't become PTSD symptoms. And part of the practice is to remember and tell the story and to reframe it as resourceful abilities. So it was very resourcing for me because they were already very resilient, the people that I got to talk to. I bet you not everyone is like that, but the few that I got to talk to, shocked, their friends died. They saw people getting shot at next to them, but they were resourceful enough, and they felt able enough to run away, and that's meaningful. So of course they'll be scratched, of course there will be leftovers from such an experience, but hopefully it won't turn into PTSD.
And you find clearly, you're suggesting you find this supporting others to be incredibly helpful for yourself, Shachar.
Yeah, there's something at the therapist chair that I'm able to contain. It feels like I'm able to contain infinity. Of course, that's not infinity. I have my shadows, but at the chair, I'm so wide. I'm able to listen to stories that if I read them on the newspaper, they would be too much. It's amazing to see the difference in my state of mind and how I'm able to contain reality.
Yes.
Still, some of the stories come up before I go to sleep or when I meditate. When I close my eyes for meditation, at first I can see the stories I heard. Yeah.
That's right. In Catholicism, they have this idea of being a sin eater. In other words, you're feeling other people's sins, other people's pain. And it's a very, very elevated spiritual practice. And
that's a good reminder. I should probably do some tongue line. That's a good idea.
Yeah, sin eater.
Breathing in the pain and sending out light. That's a good idea. You don't know me so much. I gotta tell you, it's interesting for me to how I'm showing up because you're not Israeli, because I'm telling the story as Israeli to Americans. I tell the story in a wider way, even in my mind. So, at the beginning of our talk, I got flooded and cried. That's not a common thing for me. I'm quite a tough guy. I don't easily show feelings. And one of the amazing things that has happened is like, I feel as if my heart was torn open. And I am able to show feelings so much and to cry it out. That's actually a blessing that I didn't want to get, but now that I got it,
you bet.
That's unique for me.
And what is it is there something in you that shifted that allows you to be so open to the feelings?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I just recognize that it happened. I mean, since I became a dad 11, 12 years ago, I became very sensitive to children's stories. It's very hard for me to hear about children's pain. So that's what started it here in this story. There's so many children and parents that were hurt, but it expanded to, what I just told you that made me cry was thinking about a quarter of that kibbutz that was killed. I don't know, I'm able to feel and let it out, which is a blessing. Many people, it's too much and they're numb or they're too anxious right now. I'm actually happy that I'm able to cry. I feel way better after those feelings get through me. It feels like infinite grief at the moment, but even those small drops are meaningful.
Shachar, after my older brother committed suicide in my home, I was unable to cry for over a year and a half, and I was visiting a friend and it hit. And, and it wasn't just a few tears. My whole body was just shaking and sobbing. And I called my friend and Mark, I need you. He came in, he was a smart guy, just sat there with me, and it just came out. It came out. And one of the things I've been learning this summer, I've been on pretty much a spiritual retreat of sorts and trying to deal with, my PTSD and my pain. And what I came to realize is I'm broken. And, all the king's horses and all the king's men are going to put Johnny's pieces back together again. I am broke. And that's okay. And that we all are broken. And in the advent or in the face of these things are almost beyond horrific, what we can imagine. This is not a bad guy cartoon or something or a Hollywood production. This is real. It's going on at the moment. How do we accept that brokenness and continue to function? And hopefully the answer can be we can function better than we did before, because there's, as Cohen, the great songwriter, he said, God comes through the cracks, in the brokenness, and that's where God can come through. And I imagine if I had someone of your experience spiritually and orientation, you could help them honor those cracks and let the light come through, because the other option is to become hateful and angry and irreparably broken. Yeah. And I guess the brokenness I'm talking about is a brokenness that allows spirit, compassion, and wisdom to come through.
Yeah. So in some sense, I feel like I've been practicing my whole life towards this moment. I mean, this is true about every moment, but right now it's really powerful. I'm a therapist. I'm I meditate for 25 years or so. I'm trauma informed, integrally informed. I've been learning about grief just because I thought that's important. Stephen Jenkinson and what's his name, Whaler, and wow, this is the time to put all of this into practice.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a crack in everything. This is where the light gets in, and from trauma to dharma and all of this stuff. Right now, we're not there yet. But yeah, I'm going to have a lot of work here in the next 2 years.
Mm.
Right now, it's more about stabilizing and functioning. We're not really in the processing piece yet.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. I find myself just sitting with the feelings you have and you evince as you speak, Shachar, and just being pulled to silence by them. Somehow the words don't come the way they usually do.
Yeah, I know this is a podcast and that's not really fitting, but that's yeah, you're really feeling something. I feel like grief,
Mm-hmm.
and especially such deep grief. There really aren't words. It's really. I went today for the funeral. I didn't say anything. I just hugged them. What can I say?
No. Right. We
Yeah.
talked the other day, and I was trying to find something cheerful to say, or not cheerful, but something positive, and it felt, uh, yeah, it either it didn't feel right, or it just felt, we're
Yeah,
not,
it's
not
it's
quite
like
there.
the words are like I'm here with you, but when I say it, it's not it. When we can feel that, it's meaningful. The words don't really
Yeah.
convey the presence. I'm here, presence with your unbelievable pain.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. And that's helpful, Shachar, because yeah, my very active mind, of course, runs to ideas and solutions and what to do. And your point, I think coming very deeply out of your own long-term work and your therapeutic practices, you're emphasizing the importance of just being with the feelings and being open to them. And I really appreciate the concept you introduced, John, of being a sin eater, being someone who is willing to be open to an experience another's pain, empathize with it, and in that process, in some mysterious way, I don't think I understand, help the metabolism and processing something, as we know from therapy, doing therapy. There's something magical about just being willing to be with another human being in their pain and to be open to it, not to contract, but to really open and try to empathize as fully as possible. And just being experienced, being felt by someone is such a gift.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I could feel how this is helping me. Thank you, Rogers. Just with you doing that and being that. Yeah.
Well, I'm certainly aware of the way this is touching me, and I'm a little teary at the moment. And I spent the last significant part of this, of course, having, like so many people around the planet, I've been caught up in reading and watching this unfolding disaster, and have been doing some study over the last few days and kind of try to wrap my head and get some understanding. But it's very different in this moment now to be with you and to feel the pain, but also the openness and just receptivity you demonstrate to it, and that feels like, oh, this is where the personal healing is, in this kind of immediacy of experience.
Beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, because I was thinking what I should talk about ahead of time. Yeah.
I was thinking about it too. But,
I was thinking about three.
but you've brought us into the immediacy of the experience and the process, and you're making me realize, yes, this is where, yes, we need the thinking and the big picture and the holding perspectives and all the things I was trying to do, and which I said I hoped we might be able to do together. But what I'm realizing now, I'm being humbled and realizing the importance of just being willing to let the ideas go and be with you and the immediacy of your experience and our shared experience. And I'm reminded of the words of Carl Jung, learn your theories as well as possible, but set them aside when you come in contact with the living soul.
Yeah.
Feels very right.
Yeah.
I really appreciate your openness and bringing us into the immediacy of this experience.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I'm actually really, what's the word? Not excited, but curious about my experience. I'm at the same time very open and like this deep knowing of everything is okay, while grieving so deeply. I never felt such deep pain and grief and agony. That's my main experience. I have other sides, but that's my main experience. And being open, that's very special, very unique.
So you mentioned three things, Shachar, and I'd love to have you say a little more, because you spoke of experiencing a pain and grief unlike you'd ever felt, and you spoke of simultaneous openness to the fullness of your experience and clearly your clients' and others' experience. And you also have mentioned twice now this sense of okayness underneath. And I wonder if you, and I'd love it if you could just say a little more about that, because it feels really important.
Yeah. Well, it's best described as a knowing. It's not a belief. I don't believe that. I just know it. It feels like in my bones almost.
Yeah.
That everything is okay and things might get worse. I don't know. You know, the people around me that are anxious, they might be right. We just had something that we didn't know we should be anxious of. So Hezbollah, Syria, Iran, that might happen. It might get worse. And still there's this just knowing that everything is okay. It's not really, if I put it to words, it takes it away. You know, I don't want anybody to die. I don't want anybody to suffer. I still have a lot to give. I'm not ready to die yet. But at the same time, I know that if that happens, that's okay. It happens. It's part of the big plan, big picture, big movement, big love.
Well, Shachar, and also what you're saying is one of the perennial teachings that we get from all the great mystics. You know, that in spite of everything, the horror, the pain, the ridiculousness of human beings and how much we hate each other and how we behave sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes, that everything is essentially okay. And I think I mentioned in our conversation, I had that insight deeply this summer. And then I discovered that, you know, the most famous phrase from Julian of Norwich, who was a mystic who's, because of the radicalness of her views, were kept in hiding for 500 years. They wouldn't have been accepted in medieval Catholicism. But her most famous phrase is, all shall be well. All shall be well. All shall be well. And it's that knowing that it's okay, and that it could not be any other way. And why is that so? Well, because that's the way God is, you know. And okay, thank you. And I think my heart is beginning to catch up with the inside of my brain when I saw that, and I realized other people had said that before me. And it's just our deepest nature beyond this nightmare that we find ourselves asleep in. That there's essential okayness, and that's what, you know, the great mystics have said. The Sufi, the Jewish, the Christian, the Buddhist, the native teachers that I've had, Native American, Indian.
Yeah. And I'm sharing that not as a teaching, just as an experience. I would not say it to anybody here in Israel right now.
No,
I kind of forgot this is recorded, and I told it to you guys, but you know, I'm very humble with this experience right now.
Yeah.
Yes.
People's experience is quite broken, and me telling them everything is okay, that's just, you know.
Well, yeah, I understand your hesitance, Shachar. It's a context which, as you eloquently said, John, is expressed by so many of the greatest sages, and yet it's a transpersonal perspective, which for me at least is, I can taste at times, but it certainly can't stabilize. And yeah, and to state it is tricky, because some people will interpret it as an undercutting of their pain or tragedy, and yet that's your experience, at least some of the time, Shachar, and it's the experience of a lot of the greatest sages we've had. So I'm grateful you acknowledge that, in no way diminishing the pain and suffering.
And you know, Roger, while you're speaking, I'm realizing I've been working with this feeling for, I don't know, 20 something years, but what's different now, or I would say differently, sometimes this knowing would get me dissociated, would get me transcend the body. And what I'm experiencing right now is a very embodied experience. Everything is okay, and I'm grieving. Right? Yeah. There's no dissociation, no transcending the grief, the pain.
Yeah, that makes sense, and that's the way I've heard these teachings expressed. Is like, it's all okay, and there's enormous horror and suffering and pain, and somehow both are true in a way that I don't fully understand.
Yeah,
exactly. Therein lies the mystery, if we will.
Yeah.
You know, let me put something out there, and I don't know if I should say this right now, but anyway, I told people before you got here, I said, if I say anything really stupid, we can edit it, you know. So, but I'm preparing for this. I didn't know if I was going to be ready for it. You know, I didn't know if I was just going to be weeping and screaming and, you know, just really deeply feeling, and if I had anything to do. And I was like thinking about, what is Israel to do in this situation, you know? And you have, Israel's not just another country. It's got thousands of years of history and karma and people's relationship with, and it goes on and on. I could talk about it for a long time, but I won't. And this is what came to me. It's like, justice, that's okay. Amen. And self-defense, that's okay. But not one drop of blood for revenge. And that's the difference. And I think that I pray that Israel can come from that higher perspective, and that will show the difference between you and Hamas, where they go out and target innocents and slaughter them in horrific ways just to generate fear and hatred. And then they run back into their caves in one of the most populated areas in the world, because they want innocents around them to die also, so there can be more hatred. So that was what came through, not a drop of blood for vengeance.
That's a beautiful prayer, quite naive, I'm sorry.
Oh, absolutely. I know.
There will be vengeance, I'm sorry. You know, everybody's dropped to levels of how do you call that? I'm losing my Wilberian. But we dropped from the green to blue to orange, right? From post-modernism aspect and aspirations and liberalism to super ethnocentric. They're the enemy. They should be killed. That's what's really happening here. It's quite scary. It makes sense. It's quite scary. I'm worried about the future of this area big time.
Yes.
I don't really believe we can eliminate Hamas, and I don't really believe we can eliminate Hamas from their Palestinian hearts.
And Shachar, it's as you said, it's a beautiful and noble aspiration, John. And yes, I think there are a lot of people who would agree. And the reality, as you're pointing out, Shachar, is, in the fog of war, the response is towards ethnocentrism and egocentrism. And it's tragic and understandable at the same time. And so much of what's happening feels both understandable and tragic. Both. Yeah. And not only in Israel. I mean, as I mentioned at the beginning, the partisanship in this country and around the world is quite extraordinary. I would not have expected the degree of extreme partisanship on both sides and the cultural clashes that are occurring here to have emerged so quickly and so strongly, but they are.
And you know, I've been thinking about it, about how traditional forces use liberal and democratic and postmodern values to break the system. We saw it in Israel before this war, how traditional forces are trying to do a constitutional reform. And we can see it now with Hamas. You know, their leaders outside of Gaza are calling for the UN to protect the people. They're saying we shouldn't protect the people, the UN should protect the people. You know, they're using the liberal sensitivities to claim they're the same and that the world should take care of them the same way it's taking care of Israel. That's not right. It's like I feel like we've lost sense of what's right and wrong to some degree.
Yes.
In over liberalism, and I'm still looking at my blind spots and how I really want to believe that everybody wants to live happily, quiet life, and then something like this happens, and I still don't get it. I don't really understand why. I can understand why the Palestinians are so deep, oppressed, and I can understand why they hate Israelis, and I can understand what part we take in it. But this took it to a whole new level. That they're killing they knew this will happen to their own people. What is that? I don't really get it.
Yeah. And so much gets justified within the hatred that is spawned. So much seems justifiable.
Yeah, you know, my friends, my liberal friends are so anxious and so vendetta, how do you say that? They want vengeance. They do want, not hurting their children, nothing like that, but killing the Hamas. All the fighters of the Hamas, you know?
That's justice.
That's what I'm talking about, vengeance. I'm not talking about killing their kids or their elders in no way. And I can see my wife, my friends, my parents. Wow, there's no left wing anymore in Israel. All gone.
That's quite a statement.
What's the future of this place? You know, I'm worried.
As well, you should be.
Yeah. Yes, I hadn't thought of that. as you said, the left wing, the disappearance of the left wing. In this country, it's been it feels like there's been we're already been a very increasingly polarized society over the last couple of decades, growing for all sorts of reasons, social media, etc. But this has fed on and exacerbated the polarization in some ways.
Yeah.
And green, in the Wilberian sense, the postmodern, they don't know how to deal with war, And it says in Ecclesiastes that there's a time for sowing, there's a time for reaping, there's a time for living, there's a time for dying, there's a time for peace, there's a time for love, and I'm probably adding a few things, but there's a time for war, And we ran into the same thing with Ukraine in the beginning. A lot of my progressive green friends, they just kind of wanted Ukraine to say, okay, just roll over us, And no, this is not a time of peace. This is a time of war. And I think the best thing you can do is realize why you're fighting, and that you guys are sitting on a deep and ancient river of transcendental wisdom that you've been struggling with for thousands of years, like nobody's business. And they're so underneath the insane politics of this time and the division, there's a source of wisdom and living water there that I think is gonna really help and take a situation that looks absolutely, to the rational straight mind, impossible, and somehow make it work out. And that, at least that's my prayer. I trust that river.
Yeah, I used to live in Berkeley for 7 years. That's where we met, and Berkeley is a perfect place for a guy like me. It's just being green is mainstream, right? It's like everybody does yoga, spiritual practice, psychotherapy, and we left Berkeley back to Israel. We chose that. I closed a successful practice in Auckland to move to Pardes Chana, which is in the periphery of Israel. Very weird decision, not logical at all. My friends ask me, why are you back? You were at the peak of the world, for people like us. And I told them I'm back. Actually, I didn't. The reason I was back is because I felt it in my body that I should go back. That's the real reason. But then if I try to explain it, this is my family. It's very dysfunctional, post-traumatic. Whoa. And still, this is my family. And I choose to live in this dysfunctional, broken family. And on good moments, bring light. On bad moments, really hate it. And, have hard time. But yeah, this is life, real life. And I believe I'm a believer like you. We Jewish people who are experts in grieving and resurrecting will come out of this even stronger.
Yeah.
May it be so, and it's obviously there are enormous military and physical suffering, etc. But it's what you're demonstrating for us is the enormity of the psychological work that's going to have to be done.
Yeah. There's roughly 9 million people in Israel and 2.6 million in Gaza. How do you find a shrink for 12 million people?
I don't know.
Everybody needs therapy here.
Hey, brothers, let me suggest that we take a small break, and we'll come back and wrap this thing up or see where it goes. Is that okay?
Yeah. Sure. Well, let's see. How long would you like to take, John? 5, 10 minutes?
Yeah, 5. I could do 5, 7 minutes. How's that?
Okay. All right. Okay with you, Shachar?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And then we can kind of, talk about where we're going as if we have any idea at all, but before we get going again. So,
okay.
Put in a t-shirt. So you did the integral practice thing. It's showing. Good for you.
Yes. I'm actually working out even more these days, so
I hear you. In times
it's
of
keeping
greater
me sane.
stress, practice more, not less. That's my
Yes.
little things. And I'm back into it too, thank God. Thank God. Had a hard summer, but not as hard as your
Even
summer.
you, wow.
Yeah.
No, even you sometimes don't practice. I didn't know that about you.
Well, I did a lot of yoga. I stayed out of the gym, but yeah, even me. I don't think I can quite handle not meditating though. It's just like ridiculous. Just like, okay. You know, and maybe I don't meditate with as much discipline as, but I'm there, you know, the body's there and the intention is there. So
yeah, for me, meditation is like survival. I gotta do it every day, at least once.
Ditto. Yes. I don't make it through a day without meditation.
It's a bad day. If I didn't meditate, it wasn't a good day.
Right. Yeah. This is very powerful and very beautiful. There's a word that comes to mind, Shachar, and it's a funny word, but there are a lot of funny words that come up in this context. I think we can just flow, but I know I would like to bring up the question well, what are skillful strategies or useful strategies or anything we can do? What are the principles? What can we do at this stage as the individuals we are?
And what you've possibly learned from couples whose relationships are hurting or falling apart, what are the principles that you use there? In other words, to bring people back together in love, you know?
Yeah.
Can you imagine if Palestinians and Israelis would love each other someday? I mean, you know, it's like, fuck. But are there any grains of seeds, you know, there that, you know, I always, I have that picture there. That's a German helmet from World War I and an American helmet from World War II. And there's the Buddha, you know. And who ever thought after 2 world wars and all the bullshit and all the hatred we went through that Germany and the United States could be healed today? And the thought of invading Germany is just like, no, it's just no. And so anyway, that's my shrine to peace, and that peace can happen. And even though, you know, in 1945, you'd say this and everybody think yeah, right. No, we'll never forgive these bastards, you know, or whatever that would be. Peace can happen. And historically, an incredibly short period of time, you know, and just a couple of generations, maybe. So that's...
That is quite amazing, because I'm worried about how the Palestinians, especially in Gaza, but also in the territories, they were taught to hate.
Yeah.
You know, that's what I meant, that it's going to be hard to take the Hamas out of their hearts.
Yes.
But watching the Germans and how they changed from being Nazis, well, maybe it's possible.
Yeah.
It does give some hope.
And the Japanese, I might add, have turned it around, and, you know, and have become a very respected democratic system. And, you know, they were brutal in the day of World War II.
And John, a couple of things, John. I just want to acknowledge the power of that symbol you're showing us, and that those 2 helmets, a German helmet from World War I, American from World War II, and the Buddha, and yes, but there did come in, as you say, in a surprisingly short historical period, not only a reconciliation, but an alignment and a cooperation. And I'm just thinking, well, how did that happen? One of the things that you have to give America some credit that it instituted the Marshall Plan of enormous amount of aid and support for primarily Germany, but Japan also. I mean, incredible amounts of resources were flown into Japan to feed people who otherwise, as MacArthur warned, there'd be massive starvation. So there's an enormous amount of money and resources went into the feeding and the rehabilitation and the rebuilding of these countries. So there's a powerful lesson there.
And after World War One, France and Britain just wanted to make Germany pay, and do vengeance on them economically and every other way. Well, how did that work out? No, it gave rise to World War II and Nazism. So, and it was so unjust that America never signed the peace treaty. The president just said, fuck this, we're not, I can't put my country on this thing. And in 20 something years, World War One, Part Two, with a vengeance. So those are some deep historical lessons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that gives me some hope.
Yeah, hope's a good thing.
Yeah. Okay, so should I answer your questions, or how should we proceed?
I think we're going to include this because it was so good. So just keep rolling.
Okay. So Roger asked about what we should do these days. Well, what helps me is my practice. Working out is huge these days. Really, the body has so much stress that working out, like a high intensity kind of workout, I feel that's the most supportive thing I do for myself. It's not always easy to get myself doing it, so I've been able to do it 4 times a week. But sometimes I'm so flooded, so numb. There's hardly anything I can do, and if I'm able to catch myself knowing that I'm numb, I'm able to get myself to do like something small that will make me feel capable. Go water the garden. That's my favorite one. Or do the dishes, which is something that's relaxing for me as well. And then after I do something small, I might, or there's more chance I'll have some more motivation to do something bigger. But honestly, it doesn't work a lot of the time, and sometimes I just watch NBA, and I try to be compassionate towards the numbness as well. Because I'm a therapist, I've been telling that to other people, and I'm trying to listen to my advice. And these mechanisms, they have wisdom. It's just too much. It's just too much to feel. So the body mind kind of turns off, and thank God for that as well.
Yeah, listening to the advice I've given others has saved my ass a number of times.
Also, I try to talk to people. I notice that talking to people, even on the phone, since we have smartphones, we don't talk on the phone anymore. Since the war, I'm talking on the phone to people, and I try to meet my friends. Not everybody is helpful. Some people are so anxious, it's actually activating. So there's some choice to make there, but I have a men's circle. We meet every other week. That's super resourcing. We did even an extra session on Zoom. We usually meet around the fire, but we did an extra session on Zoom because it's just really helpful to listen to others and feel others and people we're usually helping each other. What's the word? Helping each other. I forget the word I'm looking for. What else? Meditation helps to me a lot, but that's been my main practice. Volunteering. There's a lot of volunteering happening right now in Israel, not just for therapists, also my parents. The places around Gaza that are now, the people left them, they have fields, they're all farmers. So the fields need to be taken care of. So people are volunteering to go help the farmers. My parents are 76 and they went to do stuff with tomatoes and so that's very resourcing. Helping others and volunteering is very supportive.
Sometimes crises can bring out bring out the best in us. And I've from what I've heard from my Ukrainian friends, that amazing things have happened in Ukraine. People have come together, and that even the PTSD, and one of my close friends is a psychologist who specializes in trauma, seems to be a lot less because you're part of a group. There's a purpose and there's a meaning and there's a family and there's a country and there's something going on. Than if it's just something randomly happened, that it seems to help people get through it a lot better.
Trauma always feels like you're alone. Even if there's people around you, you feel like you're alone and helpless. And Israelis are really good at coming together. So we actually have usually less PTSD than what we should have had. And I can see it right now happening. People, even though we've been fighting with each other for the last year or so, Israel has been torn out politically, socially. We've had really hard time here. Everybody's coming together without differences, helping each other, showing a lot of human kindness. And human kindness is healing. Right? Yes. When we see so much trauma, when we see so much hatred, we need to believe again in human kindness. So there's a lot of it right now. I got to say that also from the Arab Israelis, they've been shaken as well. And they're showing up beautifully as citizens of this country and offering support and offering places to stay in. So that's very comforting as well.
That's very moving.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering also, for those of us who aren't in the immediacy or the proximity or under the threats you're under, there's still an enormous amount of emotion, understandably. And again, it's been quite surprising to see just the extent of emotion this has aroused, even more in some ways than significantly more than the Ukrainian war did for many people. And I'm just wondering, for those of us who aren't on the battlefront or under at personal risk, what can we do? And been trying to think this through, and best I've come up with so far is, well, one is to be open to the full extent of the suffering, everyone's suffering, Israel, Palestinian suffering. And second, to stay open to the questions, and to avoid, to whatever extent we can, kind of dogmatic certainty, which there's a lot at the moment. My late wife had a great phrase she would say occasionally, is that trust those who have questions, beware of those who have answers. And it feels like there's so much push, both internally, psychologically, and socially, to adopt a position in this country and a number of other countries too, to adopt a position. And that has even come to the extent that people are losing their jobs and livelihoods for expressing divergent opinions, such as the editor of a very respected scientific magazine, eJournal, was fired for retweeting something from that effectively drew attention to the Palestinian suffering, and there are multiple examples of this. So staying open to questions, and to the suffering seems like some of the principles that I've been able to come up with so far. I'm sure there are more, and I'd welcome both your input.
Well, yeah, on the other side of that, in our country, Roger, there's a reemergence of anti-Semitism around this thing. It's like it never ceases to blow my mind. The far left and the far right, they both do the same thing. So why are they fighting each other? Let's just get together and be assholes. My first impulse is when this happened was to get Shachar on the podcast. I was like, oh, that's something I can do, you know, seriously. Uh, uh, it can reach out, and I think this has been amazing. I think you've been amazing, Shachar, with your honesty and courage and your insight.
Yeah, I think as you guys speak, I hear different voices in me. The Israeli ethnocentric that wants the world to know about the horrors, but also the deeper Shachar voice that just wants peace. And I'm struggling. Like, what would be the most humane response? How do you hold the rather, like you said, compassion and can hold the pain of everyone, but still at the same time have a strong stance of what's right and what's wrong? What are we agreeing to and what not? I can tell about myself that here in Israel we've agreed for decades. People were living under missiles for decades. I that's wrong. I don't know how to say that.
Yeah.
But I feel like this should be an awakening all over the Western world. I'm not sure to what, but there's something that needs to be realigned
Yeah.
to what we're agreeing in 2023. People should not be living like that anymore. And I'm not sure how to still be compassionate, but also be more clear. I'm not sure I'm explaining it very well.
No, it
Oh,
makes complete sense to me, what you're saying. And I would say
yeah.
go back to the lessons of World War II. What did we do? We won the war, we hung the Nazis, and then we helped rebuild the country.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that seemed to work. So I don't know how that applies to what we're doing now, but these guys don't get off the hook. Hamas, for the death of their own people, for the slaughter of the Jews. That has to be. It has to be. That has to be. They have to be taken out. I don't know how to say it politely. And then we got to rebuild our world. Start from there. And I think hatred can burn itself out at some point. I'm so tired of hating. It's exhausting. Maybe I'll try something else for a while. I hope that would. Um, you know.
Well, and the other side of that coin, John, is that hatred breeds hatred, um, as we all painfully know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
And that feels like what you voiced feels like part of the challenge, Shachar. It is a challenge to open to all the suffering and simultaneously feel into what's the right response. What is called for ethically, practically, etc. at this time. Compassion, as I understand it anyway, does not necessarily mean weakness. It's often interpreted that way. But as an acknowledgement of suffering and an opening to it, and yes, and what is required.
Yeah. Well, I remember a kind of a famous thing on video with Ken Wilber and a Buddhist teacher, and the guy asked, he says, what if you're up on the hill and you have Hitler in your scope, your sight, right there, and it says, what do you do? And the Buddhist guy was, you can't, he's Buddha too, you can't shoot him and everything, and Ken said, say a prayer and pull the trigger, and send him passion. And yeah, and for spirituality and love and religion and compassion to be real, it has to include that, and that's not happy. There it is. you know. And then maybe someday in the karmic swirls of the universe, all the hell that Hitler created and all the hell that generated that will burn off, and there'll be that little boy there, you know, before his father started beating him, before all this stuff, before his ego inflated, before, you know, he became this demigod of horror. And that's what I think happens, you know.
Yeah.
I'm realizing that our dialogue, you know, had naively thought, well, we'll have our dialogue and we'll get some clarity on ideas and what to do and so forth. What I'm realizing, or I'm more feeling actually, is, yeah, no, it's leaving us more open to feeling and to openness and to the horror and the not knowing, all simultaneously. And I feel like I come out of this with no greater clarity about, you know, intellectual clarity. I've been trying to get intellectual clarity for the last couple of weeks, but I come out with no greater intellectual clarity, but I do come out with an appreciation of the importance of being with our experience, of looking for and having the privilege of talking with you, Shachar, and experiencing and resonating with your pain and the way you are holding it, and that feels healing in some way, and very important.
Yeah, and I would say spiritual clarity too, because everything that we knew, right, that we spent our lifetimes trying to figure out, is still valid. Okay, that doesn't take away all the wisdom and stuff. I mean, if you have a spirituality or a religion or a path that only works when everything's going well, like, what the hell good is that? You know, not much. So yeah, I think there is light at the end of the tunnel, but there's a hell of a lot to go through before we get there. But, you know, maybe that distant star is light years away, many light years away, but it's still there. It's still shining. And if we don't, and if we can't bring that forward into the present conditions, well, then we better start over again, you know, and try to figure it out. But I don't think, I think it doesn't invalidate anything that I've learned in my deeper moments, or that I've learned from the spiritual teachers, that I've learned from the scriptures, you know, that of various traditions. It's still, you know, you go back to the Bhagavad Gita, and it says, hey, you know, the guy, he didn't want to fight, said, you got to fight, you know, and I'll be with you, you know, but this has to happen, because that's where we're at, you know.
Yeah. Through what you guys are saying, I'm not feeling really clear in my mind as well, because I didn't come with any clear message anyway. But what I'm realizing through what you guys are saying is a big part of my challenge this time is how to remain human. Like, humanity took a big blow. And somehow your presence with me really allowed me to be really human here today.
And you were, yeah, thank you.
And I thank you for that. That's meaningful for me, and I hope, you know, maybe it influenced someone to accept their humanity, and then there's a gift there.
Yeah, and your children are watching you through all this, Shachar, right? You know, they'll remember Papa and how you are.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Shachar, this has been very touching. Is there anything you'd like to say before we conclude?
May all beings be happy, huh?
Yeah.
May all beings be happy.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And yeah, and I love I love you guys a lot, and everybody who's listening. If you've hung in with us, this has not been easy, but it's not been fake news either. So
yeah, very touching, deep gratitude to you, Shachar, for sharing your humanity and the immediacy of your experience and opening us to another dimension of what's going on in you and in the world. So thank you.
Thank you, Roger. Thank you, John.
amen.